For 50 years now, there's this one border between the Indian states of Assam and Meghalaya, and it's just been a constant source of violence, protests, and even death. It's like a wound that just refuses to heal. And that's what we're diving into today, exploring a really unsettling question from our source material. What if this whole conflict isn't actually meant to be solved at all?
Yeah, that's really the heart of it, isn't it? We've seen 50 years of this. We've seen agreement after agreement, handshakes for the cameras, but the violence just keeps coming back. So you have to ask, right? Is this just a massive failure of policy? Or is there something, more calculated going on behind the scenes?
Okay, so first things first, let's get a handle on just how big this problem is. We're not talking about some recent flare-up. No, this is a cycle of conflict that's deeply, deeply entrenched, with roots stretching back half a century.
I mean, just look at this timeline. It really tells the story. The first clashes pop up way back in 1974. Now, you fast forward almost 50 years to 2022, and we finally get this major peace agreement, this MOU. You'd think that's it, right? But nope. Just a few years later, in 2025, the cycle starts all over again. This isn't just a list of dates you see. It's a pattern, a really clear, recurring pattern of hope followed by violence.
And we have to remember, this isn't some abstract political chess game. There's a real, tragic human cost. The death of a Karbi villager at Lapangap. This person was a member of an indigenous community, just caught in the middle of this whole mess. It's just a brutal reminder that while the politicians are talking, people on the ground are the ones paying the ultimate price.
So, with a history this long and this painful, you'd think the official solutions would be rock solid, right? Well, let's take a look at the most recent big attempt to fix this whole thing. A heavily publicized agreement that was supposed to be a brand new chapter.
So this was the 2022 Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, and it was hailed as this huge, historic breakthrough. On paper, the goals were super clear, very ambitious: resolve 6 of the 12 disputed areas, set up joint security outposts to stop the violence, and, this is the big one, bring lasting peace to the region. It really sounded like it was going to be the final chapter.
But, as we've already seen, that wasn't the final chapter, was it? See, a promise on paper is one thing. What's actually happening on the ground is something else entirely. So, how effective was this so-called historic agreement really?
And this is where you see the huge gap between promise and reality. The official line was security, a visible presence, both states working together to keep people safe. But the lived reality for the villagers? It's the complete opposite. They're basically stuck in this no-man's land, claimed by 2 different states, but protected by absolutely neither of them.
And that brings up a really critical question from the source material. The MOU promised these joint security outposts, so were they ever even built? The answer to that question really makes you wonder about the commitment behind the whole agreement.
At the end of the day, the only real way to measure if a peace deal works is to ask the people it's supposed to protect. If you went to Langpih or Lapangap today and asked someone, "Do you feel safer since 2022?" the answer would almost certainly be a loud, clear no. The promise of peace, it's still just a promise.
Okay, so if the peace deals keep failing over and over again, we have to start thinking about a much more cynical possibility. What if the unrest isn't a problem that needs to be solved? What if it's actually a tool to be used? And this is where the whole analysis shifts from looking at this as a failure to looking at it as a feature.
So let's just pause and think about this for a second. After 50 years, 5 decades of violence and failed attempts at peace, maybe we're all looking at the wrong problem. Maybe the dispute over a piece of land isn't the real issue here. Maybe the existence of the dispute is. And this is where our source material brings in this concept called political utility. It's the idea that a conflict can actually be more valuable to politicians while it's still going on, rather than if it's solved. Think about it. It can be used to rally support, to create an us versus them story, and, very conveniently, to distract everybody from other problems like a lack of development or maybe some corruption. And you can see how this works on both sides of the border. This conflict becomes this really powerful tool for getting people fired up. In Assam, leaders can use it to stir up Assamese nationalism. Over in Meghalaya, it rallies support among the Khasi and Jaintia peoples. For politicians on both sides, it's the perfect distraction from any failures at home. It's this recurring drama that keeps their political base energized and focused on an enemy across the border. So when you look at it through this lens of political utility, that 2022 MOU starts to look, well, less like a genuine attempt at peace and a lot more like a PR exercise. It creates the appearance of taking action without actually fixing the problem. Because if this theory is right, a solved problem is no longer politically useful.
But this political game, it's not played in some abstract world. It has devastating, real-world consequences for the people who are just trying to live their lives in the middle of it all.
And this number right here, it says everything. 0. That's the amount of security that villagers living on the border feel. Not less security, not inadequate security. 0. They're just stuck in this state of permanent vulnerability, basically used as pawns in a political cycle that offers them absolutely nothing but fear.
And this might be the most chilling conclusion from the source analysis. The flare-ups of violence, the deaths, the broken agreements, they aren't bugs in the system. They are the system. A system that, from this point of view, actually needs this conflict to happen every now and then to keep itself going.
Which brings us right back to where we started, but now with a much sharper and, honestly, a much more disturbing perspective. We're left to wonder about the true nature of this seemingly endless cycle.
So, what's the big takeaway here? Well, the next time you hear about a border clash between Assam and Meghalaya, ask yourself this one question. Are you watching a tragic, unsolvable failure of governance, or are you watching a political strategy play out exactly as it was designed to? Because the answer to that, it changes everything.